Well, I do want to thank Shauna as well, and she thanked us, Paula and I, for being chairs this year, but I tell you, it's really a privilege, and I think Paula would echo my comments. It's been such a pleasure to work with Shauna and the United Way staff, and to really get kind of an insight into how they run the campaign and really what a terrific group of people that is, and really all the great good that they do. So thank you, Shauna, for letting us be part of this. I also want to thank all of you in the audience today. This really is great for you to come out late afternoon and have this discussion with us. We're really excited about sharing some things today. Hopefully we're going to be able to give you a couple of things you can take away. Most importantly is just the perspectives of these four great people who have very different perspectives on community involvement, and we're excited about sharing that. And a chance to really meet each other and network. I think that's why we have food and drinks to help with that. So we'll continue after the panel is over, we'll continue to have some of that networking opportunity. And maybe, just maybe, as you listen to some of the ideas that our panelists throw out, there'll be something that inspires you in a way that maybe you can connect and get involved in maybe a different way than you have in the past. So we really hope that maybe those are some of the things you take from today's discussion. I do want to also share my thanks to Marion Anderson. Again, I don't know how many people start something that contributes $100 million back to the community in its first 30 years, basically. We got a lot to go, so we're going to keep counting, right? But just an amazing thing that you and Andy did, so thank you so much for that. So with no further ado, I'd like you all to meet the panelists. This is probably a group of people that needs the least introduction of any panel in Omaha, but I'm going to do it anyways. I had my spies give me a couple of tidbits. We want to try to find ways that you might identify with some of the folks up here, connect with them. So there may be a trick or two in these. They're not just going to be your typical introduction. So the funny thing is I never know how to address the gentleman to my immediate right. I always want to show the respect, Chief Warren, as what I usually call you, because I do so much appreciate all you've done for the city, and I think that's a title of respect. But I thought, I really need to figure out what he wants to be called, and I said, I got an idea. When I call him to ask him to be on this panel, I'll see how he answers the phone, and then I'll know, So I call him up, and this is a true story. I call him up, and here's what he says: Warren. So I don't know, I don't know where to go with that. I don't know if I could call you Warren or if I could.
Tommy, Chief. I answered all. Not that particular.
My spies told me that the Tommy had come out once or twice, but we're not going to go there. I don't feel that yet. We'll just do Tommy.
Okay.
Is that right?
That's fine.
All right. So I think everybody knows Tom. He's a native Omahan. He serves now as president and CEO of the Urban League. Prior to that, which you've been doing since 2008, I think.
Yes.
Prior to that, 24 years in the Omaha Police Department. The last 4 as chief of police, and really terrific that public service. So many of us probably feel like we know him personally just because we've seen him around town so much and on TV so much. But he done so much and been so visible in our community as well. He serves on a number of businesses and nonprofit boards. And what I was told, these are my tidbits. I have really extra special spies for you. You know that, right?
Okay.
So,
inside intelligence.
Tom's work ethic is legendary. And so one example, one of many, was he actually was one of the guys who worked summers at Kellogg's. Anybody who ever worked at Kellogg's knows what a joyous job that can be. Scraping the vats for the old Snap, Crackle, and Pop cereal, right? When they were done.
Actually, we're mini wheats, but that's okay.
Mini wheats. All right, so my spy was
mini
wrong.
Wheats, man. Mini
wheats.
That's the ovens.
I'm telling Jay she was wrong on that one. Also a proud alum of the Boys and Girls Club right here, and actually in the National Boys and Girls Club Hall of Fame. And my understanding here is that his photo is right next to Denzel Washington's, but Tom explains to people that he's the better looking one of the, look for the one on the
yeah, not according to my wife.
Not according to her.
Not according to my wife.
So welcome and thank you for joining us on the panel. Really appreciate that. Dr. Cheryl Logan hasn't been in town long enough for my spies to get a lot of dirt on her yet, but she's been on the, obviously superintendent of the Omaha Public Schools now for 14 months, so that's been terrific. That's a heck of a job. I was putting this into context and I got a few statistics. 5,200 students, is that roughly right?
54,000.
54,000. Oh, what did I say, 100?
Lost a few.
Do I put my, I put these on there. 54,000.
Yes.
Over 8,000 administrators and employees, is that right? A budget of nearly $1 billion.
Yeah.
So putting that into context, Mutual of Omaha is a Fortune 500 company. Our budget's about that. We have less employees, we don't have as many kids, certainly.
Okay.
So it's amazing what you do, and really want to tell you thank you for all you do for our city.
Thank you.
You moved here from Philadelphia.
I did.
You've had a lot of experience working with large and diverse school districts. Grew up in Washington, D.C.
And Maryland. Yeah.
Maryland.
Uh-huh,
Oh,
yeah,
see,
uh-huh.
my spies are
Fear the
not as
turtle.
accurate. Maryland. And your mom was an educator,
Yeah,
and your father was a police officer.
that's correct.
So there's a connection between you two. See
Yeah.
how that works? Started studying Spanish in the 7th grade.
I did.
Became bilingual. See, I can't even say that.
That's all right.
In English, I can't say it.
That's all right.
Became bilingual by the time you were graduating from high school.
I did.
And then turned that into a start of a career, at least, as a Spanish teacher.
Yep.
So I have a 55-day streak going on Duolingo right now.
Oh, impressive.
Yeah, so I can say hola,
Hola.
bienvenido,
Gracias.
and I'm out. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. Clark Lauritzen is the chairman and president of First National Bank of Omaha. Joined the bank in 2003. Is that right? When you returned really from some of your journey abroad, I guess not abroad, but outside of Omaha, certainly. When he became the current head of First National Bank, he was one of the youngest executives of a major financial institution in the country. So really impressive there. Clark was captain of the Omaha Central High School debate team. Is that right?
Well, you went deep on this.
I know. I got spies. I got spies.
That is true.
I'm not debating you on this one, I'm going to tell you. And then headed off to Princeton, pursuing a career in politics to start with. Is that true?
Yeah, I didn't pursue it long.
Not long. That's what my card says. It says you switched quickly to a business degree,
Yeah.
which led you to Harvard Business School, and then to a stint with Goldman Sachs, both in New York and in Chicago. Is that right?
Right.
Before you came back. So that's just terrific. Returned home, and now you're representing the 6th generation of your family at the bank. Is that
That's
right?
correct.
6th
Yeah.
generation.
Yeah.
So just a tremendous legacy. And like our other panelists, he's certainly very involved in the community as a volunteer. And I think I had an extra special leverage with you this year because next year Clark and Emily get to serve as the chairs of the campaign. So I think he had to say yes to me. And certainly, last but not least, Mayor Jean Stothert. And she's serving her 2nd term now as the 51st mayor of Omaha. And it says here a seasoned public service, but I don't want to say seasoned, do I? That sounds kind of wrong. It's not your first rodeo, though.
It's not my first rodeo.
All right. So a strong record of public service. Prior to being mayor, you served as 4 years on the city council.
Yes.
And prior to that, you had 3 terms on the Miller Board of Education.
Yes.
And we were laughing because one of my old college roommates is Dr. Jim Sutphin, who told me you were the go-to person on his board when you were there.
Well,
the
that's
Miller
nice
School
of him
Board.
to say, but now I'm thinking I know a little bit more about James Blackledge because Dr. Sutphin was a prankster.
He is.
So that makes me wonder about you, James. There's another side to you here.
We have a lifelong non-disclosure agreement. But there are some stories that we could tell. We'll wait until we're both retired, hopefully. But before that, you actually grew up outside of St. Louis, is
I
that
did,
right?
yes.
And you would walk to school,
Yes.
both ways uphill in the snow.
Yeah, I'm out in the snow.
Yeah.
And, yeah,
And we're an active volunteer in the community. You also earned a degree in nursing
I do.
and thought that would be a good way to give back and care for people. And chose to really work in kind of a challenging role, taking care of patients in the trauma center, kind of in downtown St. Louis. Is that right? Is that
Actually, it was cardiovascular surgery.
vascular surgery.
And I went right from nursing school into the critical care unit
Yeah.
and ended up being the head nurse and the department head of cardiovascular surgery. But I chose St. Louis U because that's where all the action was.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's terrific, and again, it's just another example of the great lifelong service that you've given, so thank you for being here today, really appreciate that. All right, so let's get to the questions, right? So the first question is for each panelist, and we'll just maybe start going right to left here, or my right to left. Tom, when you consider the scope of initiatives and great work happening in our community right now, what excites you most and why?
Sure. Thank you, James, and thank the United Way of the Midlands and this great audience. Those of you who are Tocqueville Society members, I too am a member of the Tocqueville Society, so thank you for your support and really appreciate the honor of being amongst this very distinguished panel. What excites me, Omaha is such a giving community, and working in a nonprofit organization, I can tell you that we could not survive without the support of our volunteers, as well as the generosity of our donor and philanthropic community. And so I get to be a part of a number of different initiatives throughout our community, and because I work in North Omaha on the front line, I get to see firsthand the impact that these donations have. Just south of the Urban League at 30th and Lake, we have the Highlander Project, 75 North Project, and I've had an opportunity to be a part of that development since its inception. I serve as chair of the board of directors, and it's a $90 million investment in affordable housing. And it's state of the art where you can't distinguish the market rate from affordable. And being from North Omaha, having worked in North Omaha most of my professional career as a police officer, now at the Urban League, I've seen the community transformed. I recall when that development was a very notorious public housing project, the Hilltop and Pleasant View public housing development. It looks a lot different these days. And when you see the return on investment, and it was largely driven by donor and philanthropic support, and now you have families and kids, and it's a really a holistic concept of not only affordable housing, it's clean, it's safe, it's affordable, it's contemporary. There's also been a significant investment in partnering with the Omaha Public Schools District and Howard Kennedy, as well as an investment in early childhood development. And so we know that we'll see a return on that investment for generations to come.
Thank you, Tom. That's a great answer. Dr. Logan, I'd like to give you the same question, really. Of all the things happening in the community right now, what excites you most and why?
Well, I did some homework, so I have a photo that Britt's going to put up real quick. And that's what excites me.
All right.
And so this morning I got to read to this kindergarten class at our newest school, Gifford Park Elementary School. They're kindergartners, and they asked me about my lipstick, which I thought was fantastic. and it just, I mean, you know, it's the innocence of 5-year-olds, and the fact that that class represents 9 languages spoken by those young people when they go home. And that they, in 2032, God willing, they will graduate from high school. And 25% of the people in this area will be 65 or older. And that these are the people that, these young people are the people that we're counting on to be prepared to take care of one of those people. I will be one of those people. Tom will be one of those people.
Not already.
And so that's what excites me, and the promise and hope of young people whose their whole life is ahead of them, and how we can, how we as a community coalesce around the things that they need. Most of those young people are very poor. Most receive free and reduced meals. They have grab-and-go breakfast. They can take dinner if they really need to, because there's food that's left over. They take it home, and the people in this room and those young people in that picture are that's my why every day.
That's terrific.
Sure.
Thank you. Clark, same question. Of all the things happening in the community right now, what excites you most and why?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I feel fortunate because if I say anything that's inaccurate, Marian Anderson is here to fact check me. And she will. But for me, it's pretty clearly what's happening downtown. So I can literally sit in my office, and if I look out to the east, I see every day several machines turning our mall into what's going to be an incredible landmark for our city, which will extend into the riverfront in a massive project. And then just north of that, I see, in the Capitol District, a new office building going up, and north of that, I see in the Maker District, the development that's occurring. And then further to the north, in North Downtown, Keywood is building its new headquarters. And I wouldn't want to be the foreman on that job, but that's but what's so gratifying to see when you look at all of that just out of my window, it's probably $1 billion of development in the next 3 to 5 years. And it will undoubtedly attract jobs downtown, companies to downtown, and increasingly young people want to live and work in urban environments. And I think the future of Omaha has to rest on our ability to attract and retain young people. And I see real things happening out my window every day, and it's hard not to get excited.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, Mayor Stothert, same question.
There's a lot of exciting developments, like Clark said, that are going on, and they excite me too, because every one of these that you just mentioned, I have been personally involved with from the beginning, and I want to see them on through. But I think the thing that excites me the most right now is the riverfront development. I had to say the same thing you did, because it's a great example of public-private partnerships. This is the way we get things done in Omaha, and the best policy for continued development within the city is to work with our business and our philanthropic partners, and that is exactly with what we are doing downtown. This is 90 acres of city-owned property. It's the Gene Leahy Mall, the Heartland of America Park, and the Lewis and Clark Landing, a $300 million development that $250 million is private dollars, and only $50 million over 3 years comes from the city of Omaha. That is amazing. And it's amazing to talk about our city that way, and our citizens that way, and our business and philanthropic community that way. I go to meetings all over the country with mayors, and they can't believe the amount of philanthropic support that we have, and the things that we have been successful in building and developing because of that. I will say nearly everything we do in the city of Omaha benefits from the philanthropic support, the financial support, the leadership, and the vision of our business and philanthropic community. But I got to add one other thing. I've only lived here 26 years. I'm originally from St. Louis. When I moved here 26 years ago, I was living in southern Texas. And the first time I ever came to Omaha 26 years ago, I left Houston, and it was in April, and it's stinking hot in Houston in April, like it always is, 100% humidity, 100 degrees. I landed in Omaha with shorts and sandals, and it was a blizzard. And I thought, my husband, what has he done to me, wanting me to move up to this city? I thought I was in the tundra. But I will tell you, that first day I was here, by the evening, I called him and I said, I want to move here. I loved it. There was just something about the city, something about the people I met, something about the way I felt. I knew I wanted to live here. But think about something else again. When I stepped off that plane 26 years ago, there was no Gallup University, there was no Gavilan, there was no First National Tower, there was no Heartland of America Park, there was no TD Ameritrade, there was no CHI. Just think of all of that has developed downtown just since I have lived here. It's pretty amazing that because of these great partnerships between, again, our business, philanthropic community, our partners, our public-private partnerships, and the city, what we have achieved here, and that really excites me.
That's terrific, thank you. All right, now I got some individual questions. The first one for Dr. Logan, it's actually a three-parter, so I don't know if we decided since you were highly educated you could handle more than the rest of us, but there's a little bit of a preamble. I can't think of anything more important, as you said earlier, than the future of our community, to the future of our community than the education of our children. And with your qualifications, you could have had your pick of jobs anywhere in the country. And while every school district has its challenges, you raised your hand to step into a tough situation here. So the three-parter is, what drew you to Omaha? What were your initial impressions of the community, and have those changed in your time here?
Well, it's interesting because when the headhunter called me and actually met me in person, I was at a conference in Cleveland, and he said, he had worked with me in another search, and he sat down and he just looked at me and he said, Omaha. And I just looked at him and I said, Nebraska? And I will tell you, initially I was like, okay, I'll consider it. So I actually called my oldest sister, and she's the smartest one. I have 4 siblings. And I called her and I said, talk to the headhunter. And she says, oh, that's a good fit. And of course, she is much smarter than me, and she knew a lot about Omaha. She knew what the diversity of the school district was. She kind of knew about the size of the city and a lot of, and so once I did my research and homework, I thought, okay, yeah, it's a good fit. And then when I had an opportunity to come for my first interview, I thought, yeah, it was good. I came a day early. I went to Goldberg's and had a hamburger, got the size of the city, the pace. As you know, I'm originally from the Maryland suburbs. I am a person who lived and grew up my entire life inside the Beltway. Yes, I am that person. And so when I went to Philadelphia, it was so remarkably different from the Washington Metro. So poor, the intractable nature of the problems there was really almost overwhelming. And I had 5 great years there. I hear from people from Philadelphia every day, mostly because they're worried their superintendent's going to leave. So there's that. But once I came here and visited, and then had the opportunity to interview and meet folks, I was like, okay, I'm home. You kind of know. So I remember taking my daughter to college, and when we were looking at colleges, it was kind of a similar thing. We got there, and she was like, this is it. And I kind of felt that way. The people are really genuinely kind and sincere. I have been embraced by, and it doesn't matter where I am or who it is, people have taken an interest in my being happy and comfortable here, as well as safe. Being here kind of by myself and working in a pretty high-profile job where I have to not make everybody happy every day. Mm-hmm. And I think that those are the things that really kind of drew me here, and I haven't regretted it, not one day. Not one day. I've had every day. I have not had a bad day yet, and I've had some tough days, but I haven't had a bad day. Haven't had a bad day yet. It's kind of what I expected it to be. It's called work. It's supposed to be hard, and I'm okay with that. And the kids and the broad community support has made it even better. And then lastly, Mayor Stothert brought this up in her remarks, the philanthropic support being so robust and genuine about what we want to see happen for our young people so that we can recruit and retain the best employees. Because I think about our 54,000 students. If they all stayed here, they all stayed when they graduated high school. We could solve a lot of the problems with not being able to find employees. And what do we do to make sure? How do we invest in them so they know that they feel and know that investment? We're really intentional about how we talk to them about how we've invested them, and we're really, all of our words are followed by actions that really indicate that we really want them to stay here and be a part of the community. Thank you.
Clark, yours is only 2 parts, see, so yours is easier. You went away to college, as we talked about earlier, and established your professional career in investment banking. I'm quite certain you would have been successful anywhere you chose to apply your skills. And some may think it's a foregone conclusion, your decision to come back and join First National, but in reality, you determined your own path. So what brought you back to Omaha, and what motivates you to give back?
Yeah. It's interesting, just at a personal level, James, my father never once, when I was younger growing up, asked me or pressured me to come back and work at the bank, which I've told other people that it surprised them, but I think ultimately he wanted it to be my decision. And I think it's just a good thought as a parent that I've had, that you want your children to do what they want to do, not what you want them to do. And so I was initially drawn to the industry when I was interning at a bank in New York. I just happened to be lucky, and I loved the banking industry. but I still really enjoyed New York, I enjoyed Boston, I enjoyed Chicago. So I remember sort of the moment that I really wanted to come back specifically to Omaha, to home. I was working in investment banking. I was calling on a bank in Cincinnati, and we had a couple-hour meeting, and then after the meeting, we went out to dinner with the client. It was the president of a bank, and we were talking about business, and eventually the conversation just turned to life, and he talked about his wife and his children and his community and how much they were volunteering and doing things, and I all of a sudden became very envious of his life, because I felt a sense that he was very rooted in his community, that he was a part of it, that he was giving back to it, that he was making a difference, and that he was proud of that, and that he was emotionally and personally invested in it. And my job, while it was intellectually interesting, had none of those elements to it. And I just decided, I said, I want to live and work in a community where I feel rooted, and I couldn't feel any more rooted than Omaha. But it's interesting, I was just talking to Tom before this, and I mentioned somebody by name, and Tom said, oh, I know his cousin, and that's Omaha, right? That happens every day to every one of us. And I think it is a very tight-rooted community. And I do feel, and I feel this very much with the United Way, that we all sort of feel like we're in this together. So we all do different things up here, and we do them in different ways, but we support each other. And I don't know that spirit exists in other communities. And so I was immediately drawn to it. And when I came back, I felt it my first day back in Omaha, and I've never looked back.
That's good. Thanks. We're glad to have you back. All right, the next one's for Warren. Tom.
All right, Jimmy, James.
So growing up in North Omaha, you witnessed firsthand our community at its worst with the race riots of 1968. Seems to me that experience could have pushed you away, yet you chose not only to stay in Omaha, but to protect and serve. I understand that we might need to thank your wife for keeping you here, but it's impossible to explain how witnessing our worst moments turns into a lifelong passion for leading us to our best. Can you explain that to us?
Sure, James, and for the record, in 1968, I was all of 8 years old.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I said witness.
I do have a first-hand account, but but no, I did see Omaha, the good, the bad, the ugly, growing up. Two very socially conscious parents that made sure we were aware of our surroundings and what was going on around us and what was going on in society. A very proud product of Omaha Public Schools. And I'm just curious, how many of you seen the book 24th in Glory, Dirk Charlton's book 24th in Glory? I mean, it actually chronicled that era. And, I can recall those incidents as they occurred. And of course, it paralleled the lives of those great athletes. And in fact, my older brother, the late Willis Warren, his photographs actually in the book. He played for Josh Gibson, his Sandlot team, a Little League team. And so I recall interacting with those guys, although much younger. And so had the good fortune and the honor and the privilege of serving this community for 24 years in law enforcement. After graduating from college, came home, joined the police department, and my first assignment was a neighborhood where I grew up, which is northeast Omaha. And my first beat was Lake to Ames, 24th to 30th, a very small geographic area, but it was one of the busiest. Learned a lot, worked hard, had an opportunity to serve the community I cared dearly about, and felt that could make a difference in the community. And so it was instilled in us at a very early age to be very civic-minded and be engaged in your community, both professionally and personally, giving my time as a volunteer and supporting community-based organizations and nonprofit organizations. Then in about 2008, I thought about transitioning, getting close to retirement. And if you recall, there was a series of articles in Omaha World Herald on poverty, specifically poverty as it afflicted African Americans who lived in North Omaha. And at the time, it was reported that African Americans living in the city of Omaha had the third highest rate of poverty in the United States of America. And that was really an eye-opener for many of us because, we know Omaha to be a very prosperous community, and it was almost like a tale of two cities. Well, it was a call to action for many of us, for those of us that cared and were concerned about the fate of our next generation. And there were a number of individuals that convened, and with the leadership of Willie Barney, a dear friend, he mobilized the African American Empowerment Network, which was really, it was a grassroots effort to address many of the inequities and the disparities that existed in our community, focusing on education, employment, crime, and other issues that we were dealing with. And I can tell you that 10 years later, we've made a significant difference. Things have improved considerably, in part due to the leadership of the United Way of the Midlands. At the time, they undertook their first strategic planning effort in probably over 25 years. And as a result of that strategic planning process, they did a number of focus groups, they had world cafes, they solicited a lot of input from around the community and identified poverty as being a number one priority, addressing the issue of poverty specifically in North Omaha and how we could start aligning our resources to address this issue. And as you can see with the programs that are supported by the United Way, basic needs, ready for school, ready for work, instead of complaining and pointing fingers and criticizing institutions, our community mobilized and went to work to address these issues, and I think that's why we've seen the positive outcomes that we've experienced.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, the question for Mayor Stothert, and we talked about the fact that my one of my roommates in college was Dr. Jim Sutphin. See, I could call him Jim. I don't know why I'm not comfortable calling
That's okay.
But he always talks about your service on the school board. And he said that there was ever a time where he needed to get something done, he knew he could go get you, and you would get it done. And it just spoke to the gratitude he had for all your service there. And I contrast that really to what in many ways might be the thankless job of being the mayor of a city like Omaha. Fix the potholes, but don't have the construction in my way when I drive. Give more civic services, but don't raise taxes. I think there's all these trade-offs that you have to make. Like other panelists, you chose to be a community leader with the second guessing and the criticism that often comes with that when you make tough decisions. So in today's critical and quick to blame political climate, what motivates you to serve? And how do you not get distracted by the critics?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, I love my job. It's not easy, but I do love my job. I love getting up every morning and going to work. And I'm the mayor 24/7, 7 days a week. So I never get time off, but I do like it, and that helps. That makes it all worthwhile. Government, though, is a customer service business. And I want anybody that does business with the city of Omaha, whether it's with our police department or fire department or planning department or public works department, to feel good about the service that they have received. The favorite part of my job is making people's daily lives better. It's not the big things, it's the little things. When somebody can call me and say their trash isn't picked up, there's a pothole in front of their house, the neighbor's driving them crazy, and I can fix it like that. That is my favorite part of my job that I do. But no matter what I do, it doesn't come without criticism. There's no doubt about that. One of my favorite pastors in North Omaha, James Patterson, you know him. I love James Patterson. He always gives me good advice, and he will always say, just keep on doing the right thing. Everything else is noise. And I always remember that when things get hard. I will tell you this, social media has changed my world, and I think changed all of your world, and not necessarily for the better. If any given day you look at my Facebook, you will see what I mean. We use my Facebook and social media and my website every single day to put accurate current information that we want the citizens to know. But even when it's a good news story, it just gets into this huge, crazy debate, and people can be incredibly rude, vulgar, obscene, and I just have to get it in my mind. Well, I'll give you a good example. One guy the other day was just cussing and swearing at me on Facebook about the scooters, and I thought, this guy doesn't look...
Me.
It wasn't good. Probably some of you, though, were on there, but This one guy, he didn't look familiar, and I have a lot of repeat people on the Facebook, and he was really going at it, and so I usually don't even look and see where they're from, but I did, and he lived in Cuba. And he's going crazy on my Facebook. But anyway, you just gotta, it's part of the job anymore. That criticism, if you use social media, which I have to, it is part of the job. And what I just keep on telling myself is, these people don't know me. And if they knew me, they'd like me. I just keep on telling myself that. Because I do a good job. But it's just part of the job anymore, and it's just kind of what you have to deal with it. But I think I get my satisfaction, and it keeps me going, and it makes me want to do more. Because I see of all these great partnerships, I see of all the great progress, I see things happen, and that's really what I think it's all about. So that's what public service is about, too.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
I was on Dodge Street 2 days ago, and there were 2 scooters in traffic who decided not only to ride in traffic on Dodge Street, but then to try to left turn across Dodge Street, which
Yes.
Wow.
I
The
just kinda-
scooters are a challenge right
think
now,
there's
let me tell you.
I think there's a Darwinian process that happens
I know.
if we just let it, but that's another story. So.
But keep in mind, the scooters are a pilot. It's a 6-month pilot. We only have
I
2
didn't
months
mean you
to
to
go.
defend it. I was just telling a story. See,
We get a
that's
lot
what
of
you
comments
get.
about scooters.
So the next question is really for any panelist. We have a bunch of community leaders out in the audience as well today, a bunch of Tocqueville Society members and folks that are really interested in giving back. But we all get involved with a lot of different things. How do we determine when to say yes and how to strike a healthy balance with not only what you do in the community, but your home life? So does anybody want to offer a perspective on that for the audience?
Well, I'll just start by first suggesting and thanking those of you who served as volunteers on the boards of nonprofit organizations. As I mentioned earlier, we could not survive, and representing the nonprofit sector here today, I can tell you that we really appreciate the service, the support, the leadership, the expertise that you provide as volunteers. I've served on my share of boards, and of course now in my current capacity, I think, not only do I have a number of current board members or past board members of the Urban League of Nebraska here today, just in terms of making sure that, that experience is meaningful and it's reciprocal, and their participation in our organization pays a benefit or a dividend in terms of giving their time and their talent. And you just want to make sure that you're aligned with the mission of that organization. Your time is valuable, and the input and support that you can provide the community-based organizations, it has to be worthwhile. And I can tell you that we, as a community, we do benefit tremendously from the leadership that we receive from our donors and our volunteers.
Anyone else want to talk about how they say yes?
I was going to say, I used to be in the community in Omaha. I always wanted to stay involved, and I used to be involved in a lot more volunteer organizations, serving on boards, things like that. And I enjoyed it. In fact, when I was on the Millard School Board, that was a volunteer job for 12 years. But since I've been mayor, it is definitely a 24/7 job. I find myself, I don't have enough time anymore to actually serve on those boards, but I try to make myself available whenever I can to events like this or others. There's so many worthwhile organizations, nonprofits, different organizations throughout the city that are so important. And I feel like if the city can be a good partner with them. Willie mentioned the Empowerment Network. And I think you mentioned the Step Up Summer Jobs Program too. The city of Omaha is the biggest funder of that Step Up Summer Jobs Program at over $1 million a year. And so I feel like it's my job to make sure that the city of Omaha and city government stays engaged, aware, and takes part in those organizations as much as we can.
Other comments on saying yes to?
For me, James, we have a saying in our family and our company that a bank is a reflection of its community, which is to say if the community's doing well, the bank will do well, and if the bank's doing well, the community will. So in many ways, I feel like the mission of our organization is to be engaged actively in the community. And so I view it that way. the reality is I don't have time to do everything, and so I can't say yes to everything. I do think a lot about what am I passionate about. I'm not passionate about everything. Some things I'm very passionate about, and then I think about what things will have the most impact. But then even within that specifically, will I have an impact for being on this board? Sometimes, you get asked to be on a board and you feel like perhaps you're being asked to be on it in name only, or you'll be on that board but you won't actively be engaged. And I think that's probably where I've learned the most, which is I really only want to get involved with where my presence will actually make a difference. And there's plenty of opportunity to do that.
Next question?
Next question.
Next question. For many panelists again, when you're involved with a community project or serving on a nonprofit board, how do you influence others in a way that's different from how you lead teams in your day jobs? Anybody have a perspective on different type
I
of
was going to
leadership?
say, I think they're both very, very similar. I mean, I think I use the same principles that I did when I was on the school board or a volunteer board, or now that I am mayor. I think that there's characteristics of leadership that I use every day in the job that I have, and all of you use every day, no matter if your job is in government, it's in business, it's in philanthropy. I think we all have those same leadership characteristics. So I think or we use them. Some of them that I always talk about is listening, and is so important. It's not just talking, but it's listening and it's hearing people, and you have to be open to diverse opinions of people. You can't just be stuck on the things that you think. You've got to be open, and you can't be dismissive. I think you have to consult with others when you work together, whether it be my job or whether it be any of your jobs. I think you have to share information, good and bad. I think you have to take ownership of what you do. And you have to fess up when you do something wrong. I don't think there's anybody ever successful that has only become successful because they only talk about their successes. You have to own up to your failures too. And I think you have to be transparent. And I think that that's really important. So I think no matter what you do, some of those leadership characteristics that we all use every day are important, and no matter what we're doing.
Appreciate that. Any other perspectives on how your leadership in a nonprofit situation might differ from corporate leadership?
I would say that for me, that I think the best leaders are also really good followers, and that when you serve on a board, where you in your day to day, you're making, you're kind of, to use one of my favorite presidents, you're the decider. You have an opportunity to really kind of sit back and follow, and depend on the staff. In this case, Shauna, to execute and make sure that you are a support to her and to her team. And I think that is that you want to ask tough questions, and you want to do that, but you really want to make sure that you are really stepping out of your role of being the ultimate decision maker. In most cases, the people are super powerful people and have incredible scope and reach in their day-to-day jobs. And I think that to me is what you want to do to be an effective on a board, and then to kind of step away and allow her to lead, and for us to follow, ask the hard questions, and do what we can to make sure that the organization is successful.
Great answer. Well, I know we got started just a little bit late, so maybe I'll just go to our final question. I'd like each panelist to maybe take this one, and maybe start with Mayor Stothert and work the way towards me. But from your perspective, what's the biggest challenge facing our community right now, and what can our attendees do to help move the needle?
I would have to say the biggest challenge that I have to deal with as mayor is public safety. I mean, that is my number one priority. That's my number one goal that I talked about when I first ran for mayor 6 years ago. When I talk about public safety, many people think it's just the fire and the police department and the job they do, and that is extremely important, because you're not going to want to live in a city or grow your business in a city if you don't feel safe. But for me, public safety it's almost every one of my city departments. Public safety is keeping the streets plowed and the streets in good condition and the snow removed and the street lights turned on and the trash picked up and the parks in good condition and the codes enforced in our planning department. All that has to do with public safety. But going back to fire and police, I think, and I know, Tom, you're an expert on this too, but we have seen remarkable improvements in public safety in the city of Omaha. And I think that continues to be our biggest challenge, but I think it's one of our biggest successes that we can talk about. We have a very good police department that we have grown by over 100 police officers since I've been mayor. We have a very good chief right now, but we've had very good chiefs in the past too that have just paved the path. We are opening our 5th police precinct right now. All of that helps with public safety and response times all over the city. One of those statistics that I wanted to mention, though, because of public safety, because I think it's important that you all know, because it helps you feel safer, is we use 7 indexes to evaluate crime. In 2018, every one of them showed marked improvements. And the one we really look at the most is homicide and the number of shootings. And in 2018, we had 22 homicides. To put that in perspective, 2015, we had 50. We had the lowest number of homicides in over 25 years. And that just wasn't a fluke, it's a pattern. And so because of all of the help that we have from our business, our philanthropic community, our volunteer community, the Empowerment Network, the work they've done, 360 that focuses on gang violence, the things that we have done and been able to purchase and support because of the help. Yesterday I was at the First Responders Luncheon for 911, and that group in itself raises money to help our fire and police departments. So it's that partnership that I think is very, very important. But that still remains, I would say, my biggest challenge, and probably the biggest challenge for the city. You want to live in a city if you feel safe in that city, and not just in one part of the city, in the entire city.
Thank you. Same question, Clark. What's the biggest community challenge right now, and what can our audience do to move the needle?
You know, I spend a lot of time with clients of the bank who run companies, and the consistent issue everybody says to me, and that I feel as well, is talent and a shortage of really good available talent. And I think, you know, I'll never forget, I was chairman of the Chamber of Commerce in 2015. I'll never forget when David Brown called me one morning and, you know, told me that ConAgra was leaving. And I think the unfortunate reality is companies and employers are very mobile today, and they will move into markets where they can find the best available talent. And I think employees are mobile. And we as a community collectively should view the talent, you know, race as one that we all own a piece of. And it ranges from government to educational institutions to philanthropy to businesses. But we have to improve the pool of available talent in this community to both attract companies and retain them. I mean, I just don't think we have a birthright to retain the companies that we have today. And the simple reality is, over time, some companies will transition ownership or go into different places. So we have to constantly be creating a new crop of companies and entrepreneurs and talent in this community, and view that as an economic and community priority from a philanthropic standpoint.
Great answer. Dr. Logan?
I think it's, from my perspective, it's poverty and hopelessness that go along with poverty. And I would say that when I look at data for my immigrant students, they have excellent growth scores, and they are just typically doing pretty well. And I think a lot of that is they are hopeful. And a hopeful heart and a hopeful spirit approaches the world very differently than a hopeless heart and a hopeless spirit. And you know, some of the things that go along with generational poverty that kind of bleed into hopelessness and then end up having tentacles into other things that happen that are, or unfortunate choices that folks make. And I think what I would say to the audience is that whatever is in your heart to do and within your means to do, that you go deep. And rather than spread thin, think about how you approach and go deep. That's what I would say. go really deep.
Tom?
Sure, just to kind of echo the sentiments of Dr. Logan, my sister has a famous quote where she says, where there's no hope, consequences don't matter. And for youth or young adults that are hopeless, it's kind of difficult for them to think or plan for their future. Clark mentioned talent retention. We work in workforce development in that space, and of course, trying to create an environment for our young professionals to grow and to prosper. We engage that demographic quite a bit to listen to them in terms of some of their issues and challenges, and I would tell you that is probably number one on the list. How do we retain our best and brightest and create an environment that's welcoming, that is diverse, that is inclusive? A few years ago, the Urban League partnered with the Chamber of Commerce and conducted a survey of our young professionals, and where overwhelmingly the response was favorable in terms of their perception of the city of Omaha as a great place to live, work, and play. When we disaggregated the data by race, what we found was that African American young professionals were 5 to 6 times less likely to perceive Omaha as a favorable place to live, work, and play. And rather than just complain about it, we mobilized and we worked to address some of these issues. Why would a cohort, why would a demographic feel the way they felt? And more importantly, what can we do to change it? And so as a community, we did respond. There are efforts and initiatives, the Code Initiative sponsored by the Chamber. They have a big conference coming up next week. The 100 largest companies in the United States signed a pledge, and many of our local Fortune 100s signed on. There's efforts and interests in addressing these issues in terms of creating environments that are welcoming, where there's opportunities for hiring, promotion, professional development, mentoring, training, entrepreneurship. Omaha is a very good community, and it's a prosperous community, and all populations should be able to benefit from this prosperity. And so I would say, trying to retain and cultivate our best and brightest, and where our companies, we have many leaders, corporate executives in the room, CEOs, you have a vested interest in making sure that we have an environment where our best and brightest want to stay. I think you should feel compelled to want to grow your own. We have a challenge of recruiting outside the state. We export more talent than we import. Birth rates are slowing down. And so if we're going to grow our local economy, it's my opinion that we have to grow from within. And so I think we need to invest more so in our local talent and make sure we retain them.
Yeah, I agree with all the panelists. I think those are great answers. This has got to be a place where people want to live. And that's what you all do, is help make this a place that people want to live. Everybody in the audience does that. I want to thank you all for doing this today. Really appreciate it. I learned a lot myself just hearing the answers and the perspectives. Also want to thank all the Tocqueville members in the audience. Again, as Marion and Andy started this thing 30 years ago, $100 million is really making a big difference. And contributing to that is part of what panelists here talked about in terms of the great things that have been happening in this community. If you're not a Tocqueville member, you want to learn more, there's going to be a number of opportunities coming up. There'll be some information available to be sent out here in the next few days, I think, from the United Way to hear more about that. I mentioned earlier that Paul and I are very proud to be chairs this year of the United Way campaign, and I think you see why. I think you see when you get involved, you get more than you give. And so we really appreciate having the opportunity to do this. When you do become a Tocqueville member, or if you stay as the Tocqueville member this year, there's really a neat opportunity. Hopefully everybody knows Mary and Rodrigo Lopez. I have the privilege of working with Rodrigo on the Mutual of Omaha board. But Rodrigo's building a nice place, has built a nice place right down by the CHI Center. If you see the dark brick building across from catty corner from the Marriott, that's their new place. And their inaugural social event on October 10th is going to be a reception for all Tocqueville members. It's going to be a fantastic opportunity to see that great facility, and also to meet with a lot of our peers here and just celebrate the fact what this great organization does. So that's the end. I want you all to stay and enjoy the refreshments and enjoy each other's company. But thank you all for coming today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.